Hello and welcome to our special three-part webinar series today, brought to you by CPA Practice Advisor Magazine and Wolters Kluwer. Our first webinar of this series is Case Studies in Success, Best Practices from Busy Season. I'm Gail Perry, Editor-in-Chief of CPA Practice Advisor, and I'm your moderator today. Before we get started, I'd like to explain how CPE for this webcast works. Each of today's three webcasts qualifies for 1 credit of continuing professional education. If you plan to earn CPE for attending this session, you must stay with us for a minimum of 50 minutes. In addition, we will display 3 polling questions during the webcast. In each poll, you need to record an answer, as this is our verification that you are still watching the webcast. Please note that we can give CPE credit for multiple people at the same location, so if there are others in your office who would like to attend this event at the same computer, please have them join you now, and at the end of the event, we'll have you send us their email addresses for CPE credit. At any time, you can answer questions in our chat area, which is the Ask a Question box provided on your screen. And our speakers will try to get to as many questions as possible during the presentation. Questions not answered during this broadcast will be addressed by the speakers afterwards via email. If you're planning on attending the second and third parts of this 3-part webinar today, the links for the next 2 sessions are available in the sessions box, the session links box on your screen. You can copy and paste those links to another screen so you'll have them handy when this session ends. Today, we're joined by Aaron Leckie, Director, Product Management Tax for Wolters Kluwer, and Mark McAndrew, Director, Product Management Firm Management for Wolters Kluwer. And now we are ready to begin.
Thank you, Gail. Our agenda for this first session today on best practices for busy season is focused on 3 main areas. So the busy season challenges and what we have heard from firms on where they have found success, where your firm should be proactively focusing your efforts to handle busy season, and steps that you can implement these changes, including adopting an advisory mindset and the technology that can help you.
Okay, so we're going to hop over to our first polling question for this event. And that question is, what is your primary line of business? And the answer options include tax, audit, consulting, operations, administrative, and other. So please answer with the option that most describes what you do in your business, and then click the submit button to send your answer. And we will let those collect for a few seconds before sharing the results. Okay, and let's go ahead and share those results. And not surprisingly, almost 80% of today's attendees are focused on tax. So Aaron, back to you.
Yeah, so with that, let's talk about tax season. As Gail introduced, my name is Aaron Leckie, and I'm a Director of Product Management for Tax at Wolters Kluwer. I've been working in product for audit and tax solutions for the past 7 years. But I'm also a CPA. So prior to moving into product management, I was an auditor and tax preparer myself. So today we're going to be talking about thoughts on success during the last tax season, how the season went, what worked well, and what didn't. So we wanted to start off by reviewing the past tax season. Going into this year, many firms were worried about the impact of multiple years of substantial changes to the tax code, changes coming later than they historically had, sometimes mid-season, as well as the buildup of issues dealing with the IRS and the impact that this would have on the 2021 returns. Staffing was also a major concern going into this season, with the past couple of years leading to preparer fatigue and some burnout. And so based on the conversations that we have had with firms, how did this actually play out? The general sentiment that we've heard from firms was that the season actually went better than expected going in. It still had all of those challenges that I just listed, but firms were better prepared for them this year. So this was the first time in 3 years that the tax season had started and ended on time. Now, ended may not necessarily be the term that you would use to describe it, as extensions are up significantly over previous years. Data coming out of the IRS is showing that extension rates are up at around 160% from the 2021 tax season. And that 2021 tax season is considered to be one of the most challenging that there's been. So we're seeing extensions have been used as a common tactic for managing the workload of the firm and the staff by spreading out the tax season. We've also heard that clients have gotten used to the later filing deadlines. So we're hearing firms are filing more extensions as their clients are providing their information later. Broker statements, we've also heard, were being provided later than usual this year. So again, leading to the increase in extensions. The complexity of the returns continues to go up. This is a continuation from the last few seasons. Again, we're hearing from firms that although this wasn't as significant of an issue this year as it was in previous, the buildup of the past few years has led to returns generally taking longer than they did in the past. And we continue to hear issues about dealing with the IRS and the challenges that they have been having. So they are getting through more returns this year, but there's the backlog from previous years. They have committed that service levels will return by the end of 2022, but we are expecting to see the continued delays and some of the difficulties reaching them. And staffing issues, of course, continue to be the biggest challenge that firms listed this year, with many firms acknowledging that this isn't a temporary issue, and managing workloads under the current staffing conditions is going to be a requirement. And we've heard firms saying things like, we can't recruit our way out of this, and referring to staffing challenges as the new normal, with long-term management and alternative solutions needed.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin. And my name is Mark McAndrew. I've worked in the CPA space for my entire career. As we think about my current focus, it's around firm management products that Wolters Kluwer offers. Those are collaboration products, workflow products, time and billing products, and really products that help you extend productivity to a firm. What's extremely interesting this year, and I'm really excited about, when we are talking tax season, Erin mentioned, if you can't recruit our way out of this, well, what are we to do? Well, from a workflow standpoint, we've seen an 80% year-over-year increase in the tasks that are flowing through our system. Think about that, 80% year-over-year increase in processes that are working through your workflow systems and your collaboration products. On the outsourcing side, we've seen commitments skyrocket, 100% increase this year in outsourcing. Fulfillment. When you think fulfillment, 75% of those commits have been fulfilled. Erin mentioned extensions. Well, we see that the extension season this year, workflow through to outsourcing, going to be the busiest we've seen on record. Well, firms who are interested from a tax season standpoint in an outsourcing strategy or productivity through workflow, it's really time to get started now. So when we talk tax season, your extension season is an opportunity to explore exactly what it is that you want to focus on. So ultimately, this year has been quite busy. I'm excited to see it a little closer to what we've seen in years past. But we really think that as it relates to tax season, there's a lot of opportunity. And when we think about that opportunity, I want you to think about yourself, right? So think about you in the audience, who you are, your role at the firm, the business's challenges that you face. When we think about those challenges, if you're a managing partner and you're focused on profitability, are we talking about profitability related to strategy and strategic direction? Is it accentuating new revenue opportunities? Is it deploying technology? So the business challenges at that managing partner level around energizing your firm and taking advantage of that new normal or that current environment we find ourselves in. Ultimately, as we think about that, well, from the partner standpoint, I want to challenge you, if you're in the crowd today, to think about client service. How are we establishing good rapport with our customers? How is it that those challenges against extending your process outward to your own customers allows you to create this customer experience that delights your customers, connects you into that firm, that client base, those processes, and really allows you to pull out more opportunity against the work that you presently do? When we think about your managers, your senior managers, the folks today that oversee staff, that run engagements, how are you providing accountability in a hybrid remote office? How are you extracting value out of your people and putting your people in the best position to be successful? And we think about your people, the seniors, the staff on the call day, time management and quality of life. How are we going to take those challenges against balancing work and life outside of the office with your opportunity to get work done in a compressed tax season? When we think about your interests, how are we going to accentuate the interests you have to build your career and challenge yourselves? How are the managers connecting with you? How are your partners putting your customers in a position to really challenge you with the work that's being offered? On that firm administrator side, there's merger and acquisition activity that the managing partner might be going to and focusing on, or there could be PE activity. Well, how are you going to take those old processes, evolve them into new, prioritize the work you have to connect with all of your constituents, your staff, your managers, your partners, who all have equal requests? Well, as we think about these business challenges, I challenge you today to take both the role you're in now, the role you aspire to be in the future, and think about how it is that we can really extract and innovate off of the technology and the offerings we have to do better. So as we think about that, Erin, let's take a look at what it is that we've seen over the course of the year.
Yeah, so thinking about those questions that Mark was posing to you, and looking at some of the data that we've seen coming out of firms, when firms were surveyed about their strategic goals, and the top three areas the firms listed as a strategic goal were workflow planning, so streamlining internal workflows and processes, improving the project and management tracking, and client collaboration, so improving that customer experience through digital portals or collaboration platforms. And these are themes that are going to come up a number of times in our conversation today. When it comes to how firms are successfully managing some of the lack of predictability and the staffing challenges of the past few years, workflow and project management, as well as clear and consistent customer communication, are near the top of that list. So it's no surprise that they're listed here as the top strategic goals coming from the firms. And then similarly, when we asked firms where technology is helping the most, firms identified quite a few areas that are being improved by technology, but there's also a few common threads that we can pull out of this list. So one of those being areas around meeting and exceeding the client's expectations. So these include things like improving response times, which has the highest percentage shown here, adding new clients, listed as number 2, and retaining more clients, which is right about in the middle of this chart. Another area that we can pull out of this is improved efficiency metrics. So you'll see items on the chart like hours worked per return or per client, realization and number of services per client, chargeable hours per client. And so again, we're seeing these 2 points, the firm efficiency and client satisfaction. And those 2 points are closely connected. So as a result of this, we're seeing more and more firms implementing workflow software to track work and streamline processes from beginning to end. And looking at tools around how they work with and collaborate with clients to realize these improvements. So we're seeing here that the firms are seeing success with technology implementation in the areas that they're viewing as their top strategic goals. Those two areas, again, workflow and project tracking, customer collaboration. So this is what the data from surveying and from talking to our clients has told us about this past tax season. So let's move into more what we can then do about it.
Great. So really, when you think about it, Erin and I have spent our careers either as practicing or in focusing on those who practice in the accounting space. As you think about that, well, we've learned a tremendous amount from our customers, from all of you, from those we speak with day to day. Ultimately, where do we focus our efforts as a firm? When we think about how to take the information we've shared, the tax season we've been through, one of the busiest on record when we think about our workflow processes, our outsourcing, our extension seasons. Now, where do we focus that effort? Against the technology interests that we see in the marketplace, against the interest areas that technology should be able to overcome. And we've really heard a few themes that we want to share with you today. Erin, as we think about those themes, perhaps let's first start with visibility.
Yeah, so looking at visibility, creating visibility within the firm is critical to allowing productivity, a shared workflow, and resource management. So visibility into workloads and work status, these have always been critical to success, but factors from recent years have made this even more critical. So looking at things like work location, your office may have moved to being fully remote or a hybrid environment, and you likely have clients that are working in a number of different models, whether in office, hybrid, or fully remote. So we need to be able to support these differing models both within our firm as well as with our clients. And so this requires visibility into operations of the firm that doesn't require in-office interaction. As a staff member working either from my home in an office or at a client's office, to be properly utilizing my time, I should be able to check in from anywhere and see what I need to work on, what the status of that work is, as well as a manager or partner. I want to know where client's work is, what's needing attention without needing to ping a bunch of people or to spend a lot of time on individual follow-ups.
And Erin, when we think about visibility, really some of the areas that I think firms need to really focus on, or at least the themes that we're seeing, is the upstream visibility into work in process, right? You start thinking about your people and the work you've connected them to. Well, what's the visibility on that work coming through the door? What's that visibility on the work in process on someone's desk? What's that in process work with someone else that will find its way back to you, right? So we think visibility, it's about the people you have and the work that they can accomplish, but it's also about that work in process and where it sits. And your understanding of, well, can we get the work done that we have and achieve these deadline targets with the talent that we have at the right time? So we think visibility, really thematically, what I'd love the audience to really think about is, well, unlocking those people and those resources through productivity is about understanding the flow of work, understanding the people connected to it, and the timing that work comes into process. How we're going to achieve success with that with different technology really relates to how you define that as a firm and where you see the most critical areas to support that engagement, improve that accuracy, and really help to alleviate opportunity costs. And well, what else could we have done if we just saw that issue earlier? Well, when we think visibility, I think logically, Erin, the next step is that we start to think about how to be flexible in the work arrangements that we have. So Erin, what have you seen as you've talked to your customers?
Yeah, when we've been talking to customers, to be successful, organizations need to be flexible to recognize changes or disruptions that may negatively impact their business processes. Like all of these points that we're going to be going through, flexibility is not something that's unique to the current environment, but it has been impacted by it. So what was previously a more predictable tax season has become unpredictable. And the past few years has required us to adjust on the fly. So of course, whether that being going fully remote March 2020, reacting to incoming legislation without the typical time to understand and adjust to it, changing dates and deadlines, and the list goes on. So firms that we've talked to that have been seeing success during this period are giving consideration early to how they are set up to manage these disruptions and thinking about the disruptions they've seen. Of course, we're not able to predict what's coming, but we can put things in place to better manage and pivot when they do. So thinking about how they can continue to prepare themselves for unknown disruptions going forward. Examples may be putting processes in place now, which can be easily pivoted should the next disruption come.
Now, I think disruption, right? The ability to be flexible within a disrupted period is important, whether it's staff that get up and move on mid-busy season. Ideally, we don't see that, but it happens, right? So from a flexibility standpoint, are we able to pivot our process, align a new resource that connects to the customer successfully? Are we flexible enough to introduce new process opportunities? Perhaps the way that we've reviewed tax returns or the way that we've gone through a financial statement production process in the past is changed slightly because people essentially are in their own home office and everyone works from everywhere, right? So if you're not entirely connected to a physical location, you have the flexibility to adjust that process to match the current reality. And really what we challenge folks to do, and what I think all of you should take from kind of our insight into what we're seeing is, are you a steward or a strategist, right? Are you simply following the letter of the law because that's always how it's been? Or you're seeing opportunity to be flexible, to adjust, and to really establish new core process or capabilities that allow you to be really successful. Now, when we think about that, from a flexibility standpoint, what 2 or 3 measures might you implement to improve your business processes? I'm not going to answer that for you here, but think about it. As we go through the remainder of today, think of 2 or 3 measures you might implement that can allow you and others to maintain an element of flexibility, that visibility into the work that you can pivot against. And then as we think about moving forward, the opportunity to hold people accountable, right? So as you think about visibility into your firm, into your pursuits, and the flexibility to adjust to them based on market pressures that you're facing. Well, how do we hold people accountable? So as you think about what we've learned this tax season, what you've learned this tax, what we've together learned this tax season, how are we going to establish for our team measures that allow us to be accountable? So we saw an interesting survey through SAP. 91% of employees feel that accountability is one of the most important things that they'd like to see in their workplace. 82% of those same respondents felt they had no power to hold anyone accountable. Think about that. People are craving accountability, and many people feel they're unable to hold either themselves or others accountable. Well, how do we overcome that? How do we take our lessons learned and do something differently to speak to our employees, to speak to our customers, to provide accountability to our customers to engage us, for us to engage them? Do we have gold standards that we're putting in place? Do we have process controls and consistencies that we publish? Do we have internal service level agreements that we hold ourselves to and expectations that we publish? Do we provide year-over-year insights into, well, let's hold ourselves accountable to what we have done and let's do better? Is there any comparatives that we can put in place? Do we have quick checks at key stages to hold people accountable? If we're preparing tax returns, are we preparing them to the utmost level of expectations for those who review? If there are different type of tax returns, are we able to ensure that the right activities are being put into those efforts and pursuits? And following anything we've done, are we holding people accountable to the outcomes, right? So ultimately, I really strive to understand in our space how our customers, how all of you are really considering this notion of holding people accountable, not as a way to, hit them if they've done something incorrect, right? You're not slapping them on the wrist here, but educating someone on what you expect at a firm level, at a partner level. How can someone move through the ranks of the systems in place and really shine for you and for your customers and really bring some true success? So Erin, I know that there's a lot more here on accountability. Let's turn over to you, see what other themes you've seen.
Yeah, and Mark, you spoke to it with the SAP survey. and tying this to the current environment and success during tax season, accountability and clear expectations lead staff to that feeling that what they're working on is what is valued by the firm, and it gives them clear expectations on their work. Feeling valued by their manager as well as their employer. This is something that's been noted by staff as two of the main areas where they feel value, and it's factors in deciding where they want to be working. So McKinsey actually recently reported that these two areas, so that feeling of being valued by your manager and the feeling of being valued by your employer, are two areas where there's a mismatch currently in how employees view it and the importance that employers are giving to these two factors. Ways that we have seen firms and many other organizations implement changes around this, so that staff are aware of expectations of them, they're being held accountable for that, and gaining feedback on their work and how this ties to the goals of the organization include an increase in one-on-one check-ins between staff and managers, clearly stated role expectations and feedback. Mark, you mentioned regular check-ins on where the employee stands on those areas that they're being held accountable for. We've seen an increase in things like stay interviews, where managers discussing with the employee, getting feedback on where they feel they are of value, what they feel that can be improved, how the work is going, what is something that keeps them with an organization. And so a question to think about is do the staff within the firm know what they are being held accountable for? Do they know where they stand with the work that they've been doing and what was expected of them, how they were meeting that, etc.? And these efforts both bring the accountability to the role of the staff member, while also fostering that feeling of I'm working on what's valued by the firm, or I'm working on what's valued by my manager. And that kind of brings us to this final area of these 4 areas that we think you as a firm can focus your efforts on, and that's around control. And control meaning processes and planning around work. Speaking to how we have heard firms have had success this past season related to control, having a well-communicated plan going into tax season. Early on, I mentioned that although we did see the expected challenges this year, many firms noted that it wasn't actually as bad as what they thought it might be going in. And the number one reason given for that was they were able to better plan for it this year. So this type of planning included clear communication with your clients up front, what is needed from that client in order for them to be considered a client for this year and for their work to be started. So things like, for a tax client, do you require an engagement letter to be signed before you consider them officially a client for the year? Do they have to submit their documentation? Do they have to make some level of payment before you will start work on their returns? And making sure that the clients are clear on those requirements upfront before the start of the tax season. And then regular communication with clients during the tax season, setting expectations upfront around IRS communications and delays and how that might impact the work for that particular client. Things like communicating upfront about at what point an extension will be filed if documentation isn't received yet. And one comment we've heard from firms about this is making sure that you set that date knowing that you may receive a significant amount of client documentation on that date. So you want to make sure it's far enough out that you're able to manage what may be a high volume of information coming in. And then communicating to staff and having this plan and having a plan in place for how you're dealing with complex scenarios or legislative changes that may come during the tax season, and how you're going to use extensions as a firm in order to extend the busy season. What are your criteria for filing an extension?
Yeah, it's such a complex area to be in, right? So when you think about everything that you just mentioned, controlling all of that might not be possible, but controlling where you can is important, right? So One of my passions throughout my career has been around productivity improvement. I've followed through on Lean Six Sigma certifications. And when we think about control, documenting process, not just what's my 1040 process, what's my financial statement production process, what's my monthly accounting process, but those ad hoc processes, a tax notice comes in. What does that look like? You have an IRS audit. What does that look like? You've got tax advisory opportunities that sit on top of your tax prep process. Well, what does that process look like? And how do you control that through your teams? How do you empower your teams to understand they're part of the process, that accountability that they strive for? Well, let's make sure we don't just document and then try to control through technology, but always measure that progress. You can't orchestrate that tax season, as Erin mentioned, if we can't measure progress, right? That progress could be a reduction in feedback loops. From a prep and review standpoint, reducing the amount of times that you loop in your process back to prep because something wasn't ready for review, right? We start to think about throughput opportunity and knowing the pace of a tax return through your process and the amount of individuals you have to take action against those tax returns. Well, if you understand how to control a process, you can now start to put people in the right place at the right time to be effective. So we've seen a couple questions come in. Not surprisingly, they've been about polling questions. We've had one polling question so far. And Gail, let's make the audience happy and let's get to our second polling question. And Gail, keep in mind you may be on mute.
Maybe we can get someone to read that polling question.
Sure, I'll read that to the audience if someone can launch it. Ultimately, what are the biggest challenges that your firm has faced over the last 6 months? Is it staffing, hiring, and retention challenges? Is it process and workflow issues? Is it technology and or integration restrictions? Are clients unprepared? They're late with their documents? Is it an inability to track engagement status? So again, what are the biggest challenges that your firm has faced over the last 6 months? This helps us understand where to face and point our arrows and needles as we go. Staffing, hiring, retention challenges, process and workflow issues, technology and or integration restrictions. Is it clients that are unprepared or late with documents? Or is it an inability to track engagement status? I'll give you a couple more minutes. And as I look at the results, what I'm seeing, a majority are saying staffing, hiring, and retention challenges. And then that's followed up with clients that are unprepared, late with documentation. Those seem to be the two biggest themes that the audience is hearing today. Well, as we think about that, right, let's move on, because ultimately, how can you as a firm, you as an individual contributor within your firm, you as a leader at your firm, how can you apply the concepts that we just spoke about? Some of those questions you just polled against. And how do we ensure that these concepts are applied to your firm in a way that hits your unique business needs? We like to think that we have an opportunity to solve a lot of the ills of the accounting. As members of Wolters Kluwer, we have a lot of technology at our disposal, and we have a lot of opportunity as product leaders to really hit the mark on what it is that our products intend to do, right? Well, how can you as a firm apply the concepts that we've talked about, what we've learned through busy season, what our customers and our friends in industry have shared with us, we've reported back to you, and how we take that and the themes we have into more actionable outcomes, right? So what we're going to do now as we kind of finish through our first session, we're going to look at really where to apply that. Right? So first, we would highly recommend that you go from communication to collaboration. What do we mean by that? Well, ultimately, in a standard cut and dry experience, customer, I have requirements. Here are those requirements. Please give them to me so I can provide you a service, right? That's somewhat the step A to Z process of you have something for me, I produce something for you. Well, let's change that dynamic a bit. There are tools out there, we're familiar with many, in fact, that ultimately let you create a new collaboration environment and experience, extend outward to your customers' expectations that you have of them. Bring them into the process. Allow them to be part of that collaboration of solving the problems they've engaged you to solve, right? You're not simply showing up and saying, here's the work I'll do for you, but you're collaborating with your customers and providing true value, right? So really optimize that customer experience. Engage customers earlier in the process. The earlier you engage your customer, the more work you can get done in that compressed tax season, or the more work you can stage effectively throughout it to take advantage of those resources. I mean, you've all just responded to that polling question. Resourcing is difficult to achieve with the available pool of talent. Well, let's collaborate effectively. Let's bring the process out to our customers. Let's effectively get that work in play quickly at the right time and collaborate in a manner that lets our customers know our expectations, the accountability side of your customer experience, the deadlines you have for them, both the stated statutory filing deadlines and those internal anticipated deadlines that ultimately allow you to collaborate effectively and deliver a high quality product. So, Erin, when we think about collaboration, if you could share a bit more as far as where you see it applicable here.
Yeah, you bring up a number of really good points, Mark. And I think some of what we're hearing that's somewhat unique this past year was, you mentioned earlier that tax returns are taking generally longer than they had in some previous years, which is leading to more follow-ups from clients. Clients asking about the status, when they're going to receive their refund, et cetera. And this is really an opportunity for that moving to collaboration. And it's a great example of something that you as a firm, when you're already busier, don't want to be increasing the amount of time you're spending on these ad hoc follow-ups with firms. So looking at ways where, as a firm, you can have that status be something that your clients can be aware of without it needing to be a reach out and a follow-up and some back and forth. Staying on top of the communications with the client and having the right tools for that collaboration. And our clients are also hearing about all of these challenges from the past tax seasons. This is leading to uncertainty on their end as well. So having processes in place where it's clearly laid out for them what the expectations of them are can help to reduce some of this uncertainty and with the clients as well. So that brings us to the next point that we have, which is creating capacity with workflow automation. So we want to look at how we can apply the concepts we just talked about earlier to create capacity within your firm with workflow automation. Many of you noted in the polling question that staffing challenges are an issue within the firm. And this has been one of the top noted challenges that we've been hearing. Depending on the firm, things like high turnover rates, which are leading to knowledge loss. We're seeing fewer candidates in general coming into the profession, and a shortage of staff with about that 3 years experience range, which is creating some knowledge gaps with the staff that are out in the field. And then that, along with some of the preparer fatigue that we're seeing. So we're seeing firms deal with this in a number of different ways. But one of the most critical is ensuring that you're leveraging technology to keep staff working in the areas where they're most valuable. So one type of technology that can do this is workflow automation, which is reducing the time that they're spending determining where they should be spending their time, what should they be working on, reduces the risk that there's duplication of work or that there's missed work or missed deadlines.
So on that deadline side, think about it, right? So Erin, think about what we talked about thematically, right? If there's a collaboration opportunity that can then flow into workflow and automate that upfront experience, we're ready to engage work. We're ready to schedule or have work scheduled automatically to our resources. We're ready to engage the process because it's the right time to do so, right? That accountability, that visibility, the control in process. When we think workflow automation, sure, we're talking prep to review to assembly to signature to e-filing, right? Building a process, building steps in the process. But ultimately, when we start to think about automating workflow, the technology you have, are they an API first environment where your workflow automation isn't exclusively through a singular system, but it's interconnected into the process as a whole, right? The hub of your workflow process might be how you monitor tax, finance, and accounting processes in general, but ultimately, how does that extend earlier in the process through collaboration, further in the process in that last mile, and then ultimately building that standardization that lets you start to look at really creative opportunities around RPA, around some of the touchless tax concepts, around that opportunity to take a workflow process that might be linear in a tax world, but get work out where it needs to be. From an audit standpoint, it might be more of a nonlinear process. Does scheduling take place while planning is in process? Does your engagement letter extend out quickly before you hit the field work, right? Start thinking about workflow automation, not just in, I click this button and the next outcome takes place, but where there's true innovation and where there's vendors out there like us and like others that are really pushing the boundaries of how to help you connect that experience collectively, right? And to think service line agnostic, not specific to just the function you might be in. From a workflow automation standpoint, we need to make sure that, if you have niche markets or industry groups or talent alignment, and you need to not just look location by location, but across the firm, across the region, perhaps across the world, that your workflow automation is dialed in for that purpose. So there are some folks who've mentioned a little bit about some surveying. So we will make sure that we handle you and take care of you on that as well. So please don't fret there. But now when we think about that tax side of it, right? Let's think about workflow automation in the tax standpoint. Think about it from people that are operating from anywhere, right? So ultimately, productivity comes through effective collaboration, tied in with workflow principles and automation, all tied to those themes around flexibility, accountability, control, right? Making sure that you are really working to the optimal level of what your business process can do for you. But now let's think a bit more directly. So Aaron, one thing that I loved hearing from you is around digital tax strategy and just the opportunities that are out there. So Aaron, I'll hand it back over to you for that.
Yeah, so as Mark mentioned in the slide so far, we've been discussing the areas around managing the work of the firm. So your communication with clients, capacity and workflow management. And we're also going to be talking about shifting work towards client advisory services in some of the coming slides. But we need to cover the core of the tax work, which is the compliance aspect. And enabling staff to shift to focus on higher value areas like advisory requires that efficiency around the core compliance work. And having tools in place that manage that work for you. So having the appropriate form coverage for the type of work that your firm is doing, both in business and individual returns, foreign tax matters. There's less need than to spend time as a firm around those complex areas if you're ensuring that the software you're using has the full coverage. Having a cloud-based tax solution, Mark alluded to this, it supports that remote and hybrid workforce and the working from anywhere environment, which is a requirement now. And having a solution with a single shared database. So you only have to enter the client information once, and it's really allowing for that efficient and effective workflow management. Tools like we have coming in July with the Access Return Dashboard that are allowing you visibility into the status across various returns so that you can get that status information without needing to look in a lot of places. Again, leading to less time being spent on administrative tasks, compliance-related tasks, and the ability to shift time to other areas. A question that we pose to you as firms, given the staffing challenges, is where is the best use of your firm's people's time? And is there specific areas that you specialize in or have unique expertise? Are there specific types of returns that you want to be your core focus? Are you set up as a firm to manage based on this? The tax solution, does the tax solution that you're using cover these industries? Are staff knowledgeable in those areas? And then looking at how you want to manage overflow of work, which may not fit into those defined areas. And Mark, this brings us into the use of alternatives. So things like outsourcing as a way to allow you to manage the use of your staff and keep them in those areas that they're best used in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we saw in the results from the surveys, both prior to today and today, resource utilization, resource allocation, availability of resources, ingenuity around workflow processes is just a high focus area, right? So ultimately, there's a couple of options for you to consider. I mean, we've seen through an AFOT survey that workflow is one of the highest areas of critical importance as far as the results showed this year. It's always been important, but the heightened level of importance around creating capacity, establishing some appropriate manners to utilize people effectively. And we look at all things here. So not only around the digital tax strategy, but now consider the value potentially an outsourcing strategy can bring. More and more firms are gravitating towards how do we get our internal teams focused on the right work? How do we satisfy our customer needs, inclusive of some simple tax returns that take time to do? Ultimately, we'd like to automate through that process, but perhaps we don't want to shed those customers. We want to solve to them, and an outsourcing strategy can do that. So think about it. Evaluate your situation. Determine what, if anything, you want to redistribute. You know, what type of returns? Are they individuals? Are they entity-based? Are they partnerships? From an accounting standpoint, are they journal entries, accounts payable work, invoice creation, right? There are technologies out there that help accentuate value in outsourcing or in co-sourcing or doing it internally. That outsourcing strategy patched in with your workflow process, right? Patching in the process controls you have in place for your people and extending that strategy outward to your outsource provider. Now, what if we could tell you both are intertwined and there's opportunity for that gold standard you hold internally to be focused with your outsourcing partner? On a collaboration standpoint, knowing how to engage your customers early to get that 7216 consent up front and understand which customers you'll reach out to. We have strategies to help with what's that bulletproof blueprint look like to outsource, and how do we do it effectively? Who do we focus on? What customers do we not focus on? What type of work don't we outsource, right? So I would challenge you, when you think about growing your business, when you think about productivity and process improvement, you think about getting the talent you have aligned to the heightened level of their credential, put all options on the table, talk them out. Even if this is not a strategy for you or your firm, talk about it. Ask the whys, 5 whys. Why aren't we? Why aren't we? Why aren't we? Or why are we? And come to that decision of, well, this is perhaps a way to grow your business. Now, that brings us to the punchline, right? So when we think about growing the business, well, we see a lot of proficiency and expertise in tax preparation. We feel that through improved collaboration with your customers and efficiencies gained there, to workflow control and process excellence and capacity gained there, right? You're taking the people you have, you're building opportunity for them to do more. Now, more could simply be, I'll take on 10 more tax customers and prepare their tax returns, right? That certainly is more. But now think about the talent that you have and the talent gap you're facing. Strive to challenge your people, right? So if you're looking to grow your offerings, well, think about some tax advisory opportunity. Go from tax prep to tax advisory. Leverage technologies that put the right information onto your fingertips, the right research in place, the right opportunity for you to really the impact that they see as it relates to the legislation change or that event that you need to consider when you are preparing tax returns, right? So now start thinking about advising your customers and engaging them for a new revenue stream. So we really see that collection of collaboration, workflow efficiency, a digital tax strategy, additional capabilities to grow capacity through potentially outsourcing some of that work that's ripe for that type of opportunity, allowing you to think about how to grow the business differently, right? How to innovate and grow and be successful in the pursuits you have, your partner group has as a managing partner, you have from the strategic direction of where you go. Now we'll have one more poll. I'll run that for all of us. But here's kind of the punchline, right? Create capacity, create opportunity, create process excellence and a customer experience that delights your customers to allow them to want to do more with you and to allow you to be able to do more with them, right? And now think about how to grow the business with those outcomes. Now, really what we're saying is change how you think about value, right? So Erin, let's take them home. Let's kind of wrap this one.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so before we wrap up today, we really want to challenge you to think about the value you and your firm are bringing in new ways. So do you have or do you want to have an industry niche? Do you have a technology stack to reflect that? Does your staff have the knowledge base to reflect that? If you're looking at going beyond tax compliance, have you defined a firm-wide strategy to get there? Again, looking at the technology that you have in place and does it match to that strategy? Have you considered something like an outsourcing strategy to support your team's time being spent on those high-value services? Do you have a 2-year plan in place for how your firm is going to shift towards the CAS work? And while you're thinking about some of those questions, why don't we take you to the last polling question of the session?
Perfect. So in our last polling question today, and please remember there are some exciting innovation sessions to come to accentuate what you've learned today and to really help you think about how to be truly innovative, right? So polling question, would you like to learn more information about the technologies you've heard about today? Take a minute, let us know. You know, we've talked thematically about where we see this busy season having taken us. We know that the extension season is upon us. We know there's opportunity to excel this year still. What would you like to learn more about the technologies you've heard about today? We didn't call them out by name, but the technology there to hit those themes and to take on collaboration, to take on workflow, to take on tax transformation, and really excel as a firm. The technology is there, and we'd be happy to talk to you about it. So with that said, we have a couple minutes, I think just 2 or 3 minutes left. So let's take a look at if there are any questions that we might be able to answer. So Erin, I'll take a look down in the question section, and some of these may be about polling, but let's take a look. So there is some question about polling. Gail and the team will reach back out to make sure that you got the polling question opportunities. So don't fret about that. And as we think about those of you who are leveraging products that CCH offers today, some questions around integration opportunities, both within the internal products we offer. We have some wonderful workflow and productivity solutions out there, and how do they talk with and interconnect to one another? We've been working hard to make sure that our Access platform and our workflow solutions truly are that ribbon behind how you do work, how you collaborate, how from a point solution standpoint, you provide tax engagements, how the tax information you have flows back into the overall process of workflow management. From an audit standpoint, making sure there's opportunity for workflow to lead you through that process while you excel in your auditing pursuits, right? So if you do have questions around integration, if you have questions around API opportunities with our products, if you have questions around how the 2 wonderful workflow solutions that we offer today accentuate one another or inform one another about the direction of features we need to provide you as a valued member of our customer base, let's reach out post-session and really get under the covers there. But what I would want to wrap up with, I think Erin did a perfect job saying, change how you think about value. But beyond that, think about the way you want to lead your firm into the future, and think about how the vendors you partner with in that strategic pursuit really help you get there. And we're here for you, and we hope that you enjoy the sessions today and the sessions that we have for your own innovation. Appreciate you joining. Erin, well done, and thank you so much for co-presenting with me.
Thank you, Erin and Mark, for an excellent presentation, and we hope that all of you enjoyed this webinar. Thank you all so much for attending today's webinar. Excuse me. And thank you to Wolters Kluwer for making this event possible and enabling us to offer a free CPE credit to each attendee. Should you have any questions about CPE, please contact Gail directly at gperry, P-E-R-R-Y, @cpapracticeadvisor.com. And if more than one person watched this webinar with you, you can request CPE by sending the name and email address of each individual or each additional attendee to Gail at gperry, Perry, at cpapracticeadvisor.com. You will now be presented with an optional post-event evaluation for this event, which will appear on your screen momentarily. You will receive your CPE certificate in your email inbox. Look for a message from CPA Practice Advisor. Thank you all again, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of the CCH Innovations event, and our audio will end now. Have a great day.